Welcome everyone to Vichara Deshakam today. Um, I will start off with a short prayer. Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnam Shashivarnam Chadurpujam Prasannavadanam Dhyaye Sarva Vignopashanteye. Good morning. It's my pleasure to invite you all to a special Vichara Deshakam as today we will also be, tying together with our International Women's Day. And so we have a very special guest who is deeply rooted in our dharmic traditions and values, connecting the future as an eminent cardiologist. There's a lot to say about Dr. Nisha Pillai, but quickly, she is currently the Assistant Professor of Cardiology at Zucker School of Medicine and Hofstra University, New York. She's a diplomat of American Board of Internal Medicine and a fellow of the American College of Cardiology. She has received many prestigious awards, and one of them is a prestigious Women in Cardiology Award from the American Heart Association, and she serves on the Women's Council of the American College of Cardiology. She's a well-known speaker and a prolific writer. She has chaired many distinguished seminars and has several professional and non-professional publications to her credit. And her talks on holistic health, heart health, merging the wisdom of ancient Indian medical systems to modern medicine, has been well received globally. And over to you, Dr. Nisha Pillai. Thank you, and we are deeply honored.
Namaste, all of you. My humble prostrations at the lotus feet of Sri Guru Ayyappan. And thank you, Brampton Hindu Temple and the organizers of Vichara Deshakam for this brilliant opportunity. Anu, thanks for the lovely introduction. You know, I love you. I don't think we could have chosen a better weekend to be speaking about the powerful women characters of Ramayana. As Anu mentioned, as the International Women's Day is just a turn away. The Western commentators have always been confused in attempting to understand the women characters of our Puranas or Idihasas, because they essentially have found that women of India haven't changed in the past thousands of years. Essentially what she has lived her life for, essentially what her problems have been, the way she has approached her life, none of these things have changed. And that's exactly why we sit here about 7,000 years later and discuss powerful women characters of Ramayana from US or Canada. When I talk about powerful women characters of Ramayana, or while I was preparing for this talk, I felt this talk should be named Powerful Women Qualities of Ramayana, because if we are discussing women characters from those days in the 21st century, that's essentially because we have some points to take home from their lives. And what are those qualities that make them important for our day-to-day lives even today? At the end of this talk, that's what we will be looking back at. What is it that we need to learn from them? What is it that we need to adopt in our lives from them? And what if they lived today? What if we transposed their lives to our lives today? Having said that, let's, when we talk about Ramayana, we always think of Rama's journey, Rama's life, and the life of about 25 people who have surrounded him. But the women characters of Ramayana essentially can be looked at from three different angles. The women of Ayodhya, or the women who belong to the highly educated, highly sophisticated, rich elite class who had strict social etiquettes to follow. Then the women of the jungle, who were not so educated, not so cultured, who were not in the frame of the social etiquette, yet were very intense and very genuine. And then we have women of Lanka, who are essentially women in a totally man's world. So if we look at these three spectra of women, you would probably agree with me that it's the same kind of women that we see even today. Women of the elite, high class, educated, people who are whose private life is on the media as well. Then we have the normal women, day-to-day women like you and me, and then we have women, or partially we kind of overlap these lives. All of us partially live in all three spectrums of these women characters. So that being said, let us start with the women of the jungle, because we are, I guess we would probably, the common people of the material world who are not highly spiritual will probably relate to them more than the other two classes of women. All of us have heard the Panja Kanya Sotram. So we say of the Panchakanyas, at least three of them, if we replace Kundi with Siddha, four of them belong to Ramayana. So essentially, we say every married woman should be reciting the Panchakanya Stotram daily to absolve her of all her sins. And the Panchakanya Stotram actually starts with Ahilya. The word Ahilya itself means unplowed. It's an unplowed terrain. So we come across Ahilya when Vishwamitra takes Rama and Lakshmana in their journey through the forest. And Vishwamitra describes Ahilya, or the story of Ahilya, as Maha Abhaga, in the sense like it's a great misfortune that happened to this celestial being. So Ahilya's birth was a celestial birth, the most beautiful woman you can imagine, but she was put under the care of Gautam Muni. And because they happened to be in a forest, Gautam Muni eventually, though much older than her, technically became her husband. So Ahilya was originally in his care and then lived her life to take care of Gautam Muni. But I'm not going to go into the details of that story. Indra, if you can think of him as a rich and powerful man driving a Porsche today, just came by, and it happened that she had a relationship with him, much to the unhappiness of her husband. Now, whether Ahilya was a conscious partner in this game, or Indra had just seduced her, is still a matter of debate. But whatever that be, Ahilya found Gautam Muni very angry at the incident, to the point that he just left her. He left her saying that because this was a dense forest, no one else was around. She literally had to live her life isolated, hidden from the society. So this is what happens. Many of us, not women, many of us at some point in our lives would have had instances where we felt socially isolated, separated from our family, or even, when people in our family don't accept us the way we are, or our friends don't accept us the way we are, the society in large does not accept us in a way we are, whether it is a mistake that we did not know, we did not do, or the mistake was knowing or unknowing, that doesn't matter. But the social isolation is a big problem. And if you are isolated like that, how do you absolve yourself from that situation? Is what Ahilya teaches us. So when Gautam Muni told her that I'm going to leave you and you are going to be in the forest alone, she actually, literally we say she became a stone, but what we need to understand is, if you are socially isolated, essentially you become a stone at heart, and because that is such a painful process. But in that situation, she lived with such nobility that the God himself had to touch her. So if such a situation happens to any one of us in life, this is what we need to learn from Ahilya. We need to live with such nobility that the God's grace and compassion will touch us. I don't think there is a better lesson to learn. And we have to remain in penance until we reach such nobility to be touched by God's compassion. With that, from Ahilya, let me take you to another woman who also fell in love. Here, the love is a little different. She doesn't belong to the forest per se, but we actually see her in the forest, Shurpanaga. There's a big difference between Shurpanaga's love and Ahilya's love. Uh, Ahilya fell in love. Was it right or wrong? Even Valmiki doesn't tell us that. But when Shurpanaga fell in love, there was a little difference. Shurpanaga was married to Vidyajit, as you all know, who happened to be killed by Ravana. Ravana didn't mean to kill his brother-in-law, but it just so happened after a household altercation. And Ravana, because of feeling sorry for his sister, told her, like, you can marry any man that you love. So Shurpanaga set out trying to find a man that she would love. She of course loved Rama. She loved Lakshmana. And at some point you will feel that this poor woman, the guys were making fun of her, and she was brutally disappointed by these men. Uh, and at some point, though we tend to think of her as a villain, once her nose was cut, she automatically became a victim in our minds. And people started questioning, did Rama and Lakshmana really do the right thing with Shurpanaga? So as a woman, quite often the husband sitting here will say, once in a while, your wife will point out to a neighbor and say, oh, he's much better than you. Look at him. He loves his wife so much. He takes care of his family so well. So every now and then, it's not uh, unusual that a woman thinks a man next door is better than her own husband. But no woman will go out to kill his wife just because you admire him. And if you think that you want to kill his wife because you admire him, then you are wrong. And that's the mistake that Shurpanaga did. Shurpanaga felt so much admiration for Ram. Up to that point, it was okay. But later on, as this love turned out to be a rage to the point that she wanted to kill Sita, that became a problem. So that is really the point that we need to learn from Shurpanaga. A woman's love, there is no mistake in admiring a man. There is no mistake in loving a man. That's all fine. But there is a big, strong line between love and lust and rage. So we need to understand the difference. And when karma becomes krodha, that is just not acceptable in a woman's world. It's very important to understand that. That fine line should always be maintained, because every time a woman's karma became krodha, that created social unrest. And we always talk about Ravana being the pivotal point in Ramayana, but really it was Shurpanaga's lust that drove Ramayana, because it's because of her wanting to take Sita away from Rama's life that she went and told Ravana all these stories. So always remember the difference between Ahilya's love and Shurpanaga's love. Love is okay as long as karma does not become krodha. And this applies not only to your love for a man, it applies for your love for every material thing. Everything that it's okay to admire a thing, it's okay to love a thing, but it's not okay to be to go for your love to become lust or rage. Very important for all women to take home those 2 points. Now, we will move on to the next character of the forest, Tara. Tara is also one among the Panchaganyas. As you all know, she is the daughter of Sushena, who was the physician of the Vanara cloud. Anytime you try for a job in the modern world, they're going to ask you, how good is your reasoning capacity? How good is your conversational skills? How good is your negotiation capacities? If you want to put all these things globally, that is what Tara really means. And Tara teaches you how well a woman should converse. I can give you a simple example of if Tara was living in the modern times. Say your husband had a property dispute with your brother-in-law, and your husband went to the high court and he won the case. So now the property belongs to your husband, and your brother-in-law is out on the street without anything. A few days later, your brother-in-law comes back and challenges your husband. This time he says, I'm going to Supreme Court and I'm hiring the best lawyer around. So this is exactly what happened between Bali and Sugriva, because Bali kicked Sugriva out. But at a later point, Sugriva comes back and says, well, I'm going to fight you again, and this time I'm going to fight you in Supreme Court. At that point, Tara is really smart enough to see through this, and she advises Bali, there has to be someone really strong behind this guy. And you would have told your husband the same thing, right? If your brother-in-law had nothing and then he comes back to say, I'm going to Supreme Court against you, then you would say, somebody is there supporting him. You need to be careful who that is. And that's exactly what Tara did. Tara was smart enough to see that and advise Bali. But when Bali fell, Bali called Sugriva and told him, you have to take Tara's wise counsel for everything relating to this country moving forward. So that shows how much importance Tara had in Bali's mind. And Ramayana tells you how a woman should talk. Sarasya saram is the word that is used in Ramayana. So anytime a woman talks, you have to be jovial in a way that people would want to listen to you, and then should be substance in what you say. A lot of our women talk a lot, but at the end of the day, sometimes people don't even listen to you anymore because what you are talking doesn't make sense. So it's too much talk, but there is no substance. More importantly, you have to talk. You have to have srutam, which means that people would want to listen to what you say. So Tara has been instrumental in Ramayana, especially in pacifying Lakshmana when he comes a few months later. When Sugriva slacks off in their promised search for Sita, when Sugriva comes back to their palace, Hanuman tells Tara, there's nobody else in this palace who can pacify Sugriva at this time. You should go out and talk to him. So throughout Ramayana, Tara does not represent a highly spiritually elevated woman or anything. She's completely of the material world. But she shows you how well you should communicate and how important a reasoning capacity and critical thinking for a woman is. Now we move on to another important character of the forest, Shabari. So here, can you think of the president or prime minister of India going to a tribal village in India, and there is an uneducated, unkempt tribal woman biting on a mango and asking him and telling him to saying, oh, okay, this is very tasty, now you can have it. I'm not sure the president or prime minister, our prime minister or president, will be able to eat after her, but Rama could. And that's really what makes Rama great, because Lakshmana was very class conscious at the time. Lakshmana actually tries to stop Rama, saying you cannot eat after Shabari, because we always eat after Bhagavan. But here, when Shabari offers it with her whole heart, Rama actually eats after her. So just to show you that your class or what you offer doesn't really matter in front of Bhagavan. All that matters is the value of your heart, is the sense of surrender that you have when you offer something. This I need to mention because we see people running around to impress Bhagavan by giving him gold, by giving him a lot of money, by telling him like, oh, I'll give you this if you give me this in return. So there's always a barter system with Bhagavan. Okay, I'm going to offer this, so you will make my business run this way. So that barter system does not work with Bhagavan, and it doesn't. It has been said emptying times in our scriptures. What you give does not matter. Who you are does not matter. It's just the surrender of your heart that matters. Let's learn that lesson from Shabari and move on to one other great character in the forest, which is Swayamtrasa. As her name itself says, Swayamtrasa, it's a glowing self. And I know most of you may not be very familiar with her. Swayamtrasa had a palatial house in the forest, which the wanderers come across during their search for Siddha. So wanderers were almost exhausted after 30 days search. They were searching for Siddha at a time that we did not have GPS. They did not know which direction to go. They kind of gave up because they knew if they came back to Kishkinda without finding Siddha, Sugriva was going to kill them. So they were ready to die anyways. And it's at that point that they come across this beautiful palatial house that has a swimming pool and everything. And Vanaras, just being who they are, came, they enjoyed in the swimming pool, they ate, they drank, they had a beautiful house to live, and they gave up on the mission of searching for Siddha. Might as well live the rest of our lives here and not go back to Kishkinda. Was their decision. So Swayamprasa actually served them gloriously. But after a few days, Hanuman, for who he is, came up to her and asked her, "What can we give you in return?" So Swayamprabha said, "I'm just duty bound to help you. I don't want anything in return. I'm doing this because this is my dharma." It's very important for all the rich people who have palatial houses and swimming pools to remember this, because we always donate or we do things for others. But we always think we should get something in return for that, whether it be fame or publicity or your name written on some donation that you did, or whatever it may be. We always feel that we are entitled to that thing in return. But just that answer that Swayamprabha gave Hanuman made the Ravanas very aware of their own dharma. So they realized their dharma at that point was really to go searching for Sita and not waste their time like this. So Swayamprabha was able to enlighten them that way. Also, she taught them a big lesson. If to be in trouble is someone else's karma, to help them out is your dharma. And you do that without expecting anything in return. One other thing that we also need to learn from Swayamprabha is that that name is given. I think Valmiki deliberately chose that name because it's a glowing self. And why is she a glowing self? She was really in the middle of luxury and resplendence. She had this big palatial home and everything, but she was so untouched by that luxury around her. We live in a society where we believe the address says it all, like the skyline advertisement, right? Because if you are living in US or Canada, all of you define yourself by an address. You define yourself by the car you drive. You define yourself by the degree you hold. You define yourself by, I'm married to so and so. So all these things, it's good. You should be thankful to, you should be grateful to God. You should be thankful to life that you have all these things. But there has to be a line in your mind. You should realize you have all this, but that's not you. Only if you are able to have that distinction between you and your possessions will you be Swayamprabha. Then you are a glowing self. And that is the final character that I want to discuss from the Women of the Forest, because that's a great lesson for all of us. You are not your possessions. It's great that you have your possessions, whether it be your title or your relationships or your money or your luxury or your resplendence, your fame, but still you have to keep yourself. Yourself has to be Swayamprabha. With that, we will now move on to Women of Lanka. Women of Lanka are, Ravana was a great person. All of us know that. He was a great devotee. He was an extremely powerful person. But who created this Ravana? Ravana's mother. We always say when a child is not well brought up, we will always ask, oh, who was your mother? What kind of upbringing did you have? So we need to know about Kaiki, the mother of Ravana. Kaiki, actually Ravana started all his penance to kind of absolve his mother of her sorrow. But the problem was, when he started getting all these rewards or all these boons from his penances, he just became so triumphant. So at some point, Ravana did not know how to go back. It's very important. We are all mothers who push our children to achieve success. This is a fast-moving world, and in this fast-moving world, we teach our children, okay, you have to be top of the class, you have to be this, you have to be that, and you have to achieve this, that. But we never teach them to fail. And that is exactly the mistake I always say Kaiki did. Kaiki always encouraged Ravana when he was achieving more and more. But she created such a triumphant Ravana who did not know how to fail. It's great that your child has successes, but at some point as a mother, it's always also your responsibility to teach them to take failures graciously. Okay, that's the mother of Ravana. But what if you're the wife of Ravana? And that's an even tougher job to do, because Mandodari was also one of the Panchaganyas. And among the Panchaganyas, Mandodari is equated to water. So when you think of water, you would think of the most colorless, tasteless thing. And Mandodari probably, was equated to water because her life was more or less like the sea. It was very turbulent on the outside, but deep inside, she was like the deep sea, calm and quiet. And to be calm and quiet, being the wife of a person like Ravana takes a lot. Can you imagine living with a Ravana? So a powerful man, is a pride for his wife, for sure. But there is a fine line when you are all masculine. All, as you know, all of us are 70% our own gender and 30% the other gender. But Ravana did not have any feminine qualities in him. He was all masculine. He was all ambitious. He was all success. He was all triumphant. And it was all about him. He never thought about other people around him. And that's very well shown when Kumbhakarna finally tries to advise him. Kumbhakarna was someone who always stood by him without asking, are you doing the right thing or not? But finally, Kumbhakarna tries to advise him. But even at that point, despite Ravana somewhere having a pinch within himself, Ravana told Kumbhakarna, you just tell me that one final thing. Are you going to be with me, or are you going to go fight Rama for me? So Kumbhakarna did not even have a choice. Kumbhakarna did not have a choice. Indrajit did not have a choice, as Sulojana comes and tells Ravana, my husband had no choice but to fight for you. So nobody had choices in Ravana's world. And that is really what happens to a female in a totally man's world. You don't have much choices. And this is not just being the wife of a powerful man like this. Most of us probably encounter a man like this, not at home, but at our workplace. You have an all ambitious, all manly boss. You know how difficult your job is going to be at that place. Or if you are in a totally man's world at work, somebody like me, cardiology is not a field where there are too many women, and quite often I'm the only woman sitting in a hall of 20 males, and it seems like when you are in an all man's world, nobody really understands what you are thinking or what the wavelength is. So it is not easy. So when I say an all man's world, don't think this is feminism that I'm talking. We all have feminine qualities and masculine qualities in us, and all men have to have that 30% feminine qualities in you, where you are considerate, where you are compassionate, where you are willing to give up, where you are willing to let go, things like that, where you are able to accommodate. But Ravana was none of those things. And the great thing that I want to tell you about Mandodari was that Mandodari was very neutral, very impartial. So when you live with a man like this, who is all powerful, who lives the life his way, and it's always my way or the highway for Ravana. And I know a lot of you women listening to me now will say, I have a small Ravana at home, though he's not the full-blown Ravana. It's usually his way or the highway. So we encounter that a lot to varying degrees at home. But how do we deal with this? Mandodari never tried to stop Ravana. She knew her value. She was not upset when Siddha was brought home because she thought, I am more beautiful than her and I am more elegant. So she never considered Siddha anywhere close to her. She never felt insecure in front of Siddha. That's one thing we as women need to learn. You don't need to feel insecure about another woman, no matter how beautiful she is, no matter how wealthy she is. Mandodari was so convinced, so powerful, so powerful because she knew her worth and value, and she lived up to her value despite everything else that was going around her. She only stopped Ravana in two occasions. One, when Ravana tried to kill Siddha in the Ashoka garden. And the second time when Ravana tried to bring Siddha into the house against Siddha's will. So Mandodari actually put Ravana in a spot by saying, oh, if you're such a powerful man, why don't you make this lady accept you? So if she accepts you willingly, then you can bring her to the house. This is a great point, because Mandodari, despite Ravana being the king outside or the all-powerful man outside, Mandodari was really the woman of the house. Mandodari was the queen of the house. So for Ravana to bring another lady into the house, he really needed Mandodari's permission, and that he could not get. And because of that, he was forced to keep Sita in the Ashoka garden. And just because she was in the Ashoka garden, she was never raped. So this is a very important point that we need to learn from Mandodari. You don't need to be insecure about another woman, no matter who you are related to, or no matter who you are tied up to. No matter the society insults you because you are tied up to the wrong person. You need to know your worth and value and elegance and live up to it. And more importantly, you are the queen of the house, and you have to maintain that. Also, our scriptures over and over have shown us that women by nature are sattvic, no matter who else is around her. And when someone around you, or even if it's an immediate family member, is doing a mistake, you are supposed to be impartial, and you are supposed to stand on the side of justice. And Kaigi did that, Mandodari did that. And because of that, despite Ravana being who he was, no one seems to blame Kaiki or Mandodari for what Ravana did. And more importantly, Mandodari always helped other women around her. She helped Siddha a lot. She helped Trijada and Sarama, who were actually Vibhishana's wife and daughter, when Ravana threw them out of the house. When Vibhishana supported Rama, Ravana actually threw his wife and daughter out of the house. And these two women, I also want to just mention them. Siddha was almost ready to commit suicide when Rama, fell in. When Rama was down by the Nagastra, Ravana actually took her on Pushpak to show her that your man is already dead. Why don't you marry me at this point? So Sita, when she saw Ram lying down in the battlefield like that, she thought, okay, now maybe he's gone. But when she comes back and ready to kill herself, Sarama goes to her and tells her, you know something, I'll tell you a secret. This Pushpak will not fly with a widow sitting on it. So if Rama was dead, then you were a widow. In that case, the Pushpak would not have flown. So that was a great relief for Siddha to know that secret. So, a wise counsel at a time when someone is going to commit suicide, just a word of comfort when someone was ready to kill herself. That is something a woman can offer anybody. So, that psychotherapy really worked. And maybe, that's something that we all need to learn, to be able to comfort someone who is ready to, who has such a difficult situation in life. Throughout Sita's stay in Ashoka Gardens, both Trijada and Sarama were by her side, helping her out. And what made Trijada and Sarama different from the other women of Lanka is something we need to know also. They were never afraid of Ravana. Despite Ravana being so cruel, these two women were never afraid of Ravana. And one thing I want to tell all my sisters listening to this, if a woman is fearless, no Ravana can touch her. So if there is one lesson that we want to learn from Trijada and Sarama, especially in a man's world, if you are a fearless woman, no Ravana can touch you. So let's learn to be fearless. Let's learn to be impartial, like Agassi and Mandodari. Let's learn to be fearless like Sarama and Trijada. And with that, we'll move on to the last part of the talk, the women of the palace. So the women of the palace, of course, the most important people, I'll keep Sita apart, but we should start off with Dasharatha's wife, or the mothers of the palace. There are three mothers that you see here. Of course, Kausalya. She was probably the most blessed among the three, because Lord himself was born in her womb. But Kausalya was really an insecure woman. If you read through the lines of Ramayana, you can see, because at every point, she was a very anxious woman, and that shows at the time of Rama's coronation. So when the whole palace is triumphant and something great is going to happen to your child, Valmiki describes Kausalya at that time as very anxious. So if something good is going to happen to your child, should a mother be anxious? Quite often we see this happening around us. Mothers think, oh, if you say, oh, I really worry about my child, I'm very anxious about my child. We always think that's a way to show you love your child. But is that a right thing? If a mother is too anxious, you can wish well for your child. But I would advise all of you, don't bring ill luck to your child just being too worried about your child. Because whatever is in your mind for your child, that is what you're going to attract for your child. So wish good for your child, but you don't need to worry. Because when Rama was ready to be coronated, when the palace was getting ready, she goes and prays to Mother Goddess, and she, exactly in her words, it is, oh, Dasharatha is a lover, and Kaigi is the beloved. Oh, Goddess, help me out. So you can see the insecurity at that point. She is talking about Dasharatha being Kaikeyi's lover, and then what is going to happen to my child. So that's exactly what happened to her child. Because Dasharatha was Kaikeyi's lover, her child's life went to the jungle. So it's important that you don't attract ill luck to for your child by being too anxious about your child. Let's learn that lesson from Kausalya. A mother doesn't need to be too anxious. And also, when Rama was ready to go to the forest, Kausalya wanted to go with him, and Rama told her at that time, "You don't need to be dependent on me. Your job is to stay back and take care of father." So at some point, we as mothers should always learn we don't need to be too dependent on our children. We have to let them go, and that lesson we'll actually learn from another mother in Ramayana. But you cannot cling on to your children. At some point in life, you should be able to let them go and live their life. More importantly, when the king was down, when king was so depressed, he was almost dying, Kausalya continued to blame him for everything that happened to her and Rama. So even when your husband is dying, if you are, and some women have this, quite often your husband gets depressed for whatever reason, something went wrong. Women have this way of, adding oil to the fire by saying, "I told you so. Didn't I tell you? I knew this was going to happen." Are you helping him out in any way? No. So there are a couple things for us to learn from Kausalya. Now, the big mother, she, Kaigi. Kaigi was actually the smartest woman Ramayana had seen. Ashwapati raised Kaigi so well. She had a brother called Yuthajit. So Ashwapati actually raised her daughter exactly like she raised Yuthajit. So if you, these days we talk about gender equality at home, Ashwapati was a father who really had gender equality at home. She taught her daughter to be a great warrior, to be a great statesman. And she actually, Kaikeyi would rule the country when Dasharatha was out. She would give instructions to the minister, and she would be the one running the show. She would be the one going out to battles with him. She would be the one, training them in horse race and stuff. So she was like the wife that any man would want. She was Karyeshu Mandri Karmeshu Dasiru Veshu Lakshmi, whatever way you want to call it. She was the ideal woman. But what happened to her? Two things happened to her. One, that she fell for a manipulator. Number two, she did not know what her child wanted. And we will talk about the manipulator later. But Kaikeyi Kaikeyi probably heard the worst verses of her life from her own son, from Bharata, because she thought Bharata would want to be the king and Bharata would be happy that she got the throne for him. But when Bharata came back, was the shock of her life. No one really, cursed her the way Bharata did. So it is very important to realize quite often we do things for our children thinking that this is what my child wants or this is in my child's best interest. It's very important that you understand your child before you vouch for your child. So let's learn that lesson from Kaikeyi in being a mother. And then the last person among the mothers is Sumitra. It's very important to realize throughout Ramayana, Rama addresses Sumitra as Saumitri, meaning son of Sumitra. So, there's a saying in English, in classical art, you reflect your guru. In life, you reflect your mother. So if Rama felt Lakshmana had to be called Saumitri throughout, Sumitra had to be a great person, at least in Rama's mind. And you all have heard this famous story of Varadaji, where he was asked which is the best verse in Ramayana. And there is this famous four-liner that Sumitra said at the time that at the time that Rama and Lakshmana were going to the forest. Think of it this way: if you have a sister or a co-sister or a there is a problem at home, and someone is if it was you in Sumitra's place, there was this problem, and Rama was going to the forest. What would you tell your child? Oh, my son, it's a problem between the king and Kausalya and Rama and Kaiki and whoever. Why should you and me be part of it, right? Lakshmana and Sumitra had nothing to do with that whole problem that happened around coronation. So it was between Kaiki, Kausalya, Rama, Bharata, and all that. Why did Lakshmana have to be part of it? If it was an ordinary mother, let's stay out of it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to go to the forest. She would have tried to keep Lakshmana out. But Sumitra, for who she is, she was such a selfless person. When Lakshman said, I'm going to go, she actually told him, Ramam Dashradam with him, Mam with him, Janagat Maja, Ayodhya Adabim with him, Gachadada Yadasugam. So she said, she did not even tell Rama to consider Rama as Dasharatha. She said Rama is Dasharatha himself. Siddha is me, Siddha is myself. This forest is Ayodhya itself. And then she says, go comfortably. So, when it's the right time in life, you should be able to give the right advice to your child and let him go. Do him what he likes. Let him do what he likes. That's the only thing I think as a mother you should learn from Sumitra. You raise your child in such a way that the world would want to call your child Saumitri, or name him after you. And when it's the right time to let him go with the right advice. And that is the biggest lesson I have to tell you from Ramayana through Sumitra. Now, the last person of the forest that I thought I'll talk to you about is Manthara. Manthara, I don't even need to say anything about Manthara, because that name Manthara itself denotes a phenomenon. Manthara is not even a person. And Manthara only appears in about 150 lines of Ramayana around the coronation. And thereafter, Valmiki doesn't say anything about Manthara. And why doesn't, and we don't even ask what happened to Manthara afterwards, because Manthara is a pivotal character in Ramayana. But Valmiki did not tell us what happened to Manthara, because Valmiki was sure as long as people are there in this world, as long as women are in this world, this phenomenon will be there. Manthara is not going to go anywhere. So we don't need to be searching for Manthara anywhere. Manthara is actually within all of us, even today. So Manthara is a phenomenon so closely associated with the basic human psyche, especially that of a woman. That part of your psyche that does not allow you to be 100% joyful about the success that comes to another woman. That is really Manthara. So when you look at Kaiki really loved Ram. But when Manthara came and instilled that little poison in her, she went one step more and said Rama should live the life of an ascetic when he goes to the forest. So, Manthara could make Kaiki so cruel. Not only that he should go to the forest for 14 years or Bharata should become the king, she went one step ahead and said Rama should live the life of an ascetic. This is a 25-year-old boy recently married who is going to the forest with his wife. Can you imagine? So that is the cruelty that Manthara could instill in Kaigeyi's heart. More importantly, if we transpose Manthara to our lives today, we see there is a Manthara sitting in all of us. When something good happens to another female, why do we get hurt about it? Because we tend to think another person's success is our failure. That is Manthara acting within you. Also, when Manthara tried to tell Kaikeyi, Rama becoming the king is not going to be good for Bharata, Kaikeyi really didn't fall for that in the first place. But then tactfully, Manthara told her another thing. You know what? If Ram becomes the king, then Kausalya is going to be the crown queen. And more importantly, Sumitra is going to be her friend. And now Kausalya and Sumitra will be together, and you will be like a Dasi here. Now, if you are a Dasi, what will happen to me? I'll be the Dasi's Dasi. So, this is how we all um, face any situation. In any context, every woman thinks, what is in it for me? So, when that is the driving force, you create all sorts of convolutions in your brain. And that is exactly what Manthara did. Manthara, like I said, is a phenomenon, but we all have a choice. We all have a choice, and our choice is, do we want to be Kaigeyis? Do we want to be manipulated by someone else? If there is one, if I was to talk about one character and not everybody else in Ramayana, I would actually talk about Manthara, because Manthara is probably the most crucial woman character of Ramayana. So it is she was able to create that rift between the queens. She was able to create that insecurity in Kaigeyi's mind, and she was able to, and that venom actually increased in Kaigeyi's mind triple fold, hundredfold, and that is how that whole problem in Ramayana happened. No, though Manthara in that context, we know, we say, okay, Saraswati came and sat on her tongue for a definite cause. There is always a cosmic reason for everything that happens around you. But at the same time, in your day-to-day life, you have to be very careful that it is a Kaigeyi that gives relevance to a Manthara. If if a Kaigeyi does not exist, there is no relevance to any Manthara in this world. So anytime your mind behaves like a Manthara, or there is a Manthara, there is an external Manthara, there is a question that you need to ask yourself: do I need to be a Kaigeyi? And finally, in closing, it will be an error on my side if I don't keep 5 minutes away for Siddha, though I should not even attempt to talk about Siddha in the last 10 minutes or so, because she, we always, when we talk about Ramayana, we say it's equally Siddhayana, because it's throughout Rama's journey, the pivotal character is Siddha. But there's only one part of Siddhayana that I want to tell you. Siddha had, Rama went through these 15 years of trauma and travail to get his wife back. But after this whole war, when Siddha is brought in front of him, so she was advised to come in well dressed, well adorned in jewelry and everything. But when she comes and stands in front of Rama actually says, when I see you like this, I feel like light hurting a deceased eye. So it's like light falling in a deceased eye. So Rama felt a lot of discomfort seeing her. And what was that discomfort all about? Because Sita appeared as beautiful as ever when she came and stood before him. And Rama thought, despite this woman being away from me for so long, despite her being under the clutches of Ravana for so long, she looks as beautiful as she ever was. So which means she didn't miss me. Man's mind, Rama could not get over that. And Rama said, I don't want to see you because it hurts to see you like this. But, one thing that Sita had not told Rama was that she had a blessing from Anasuya Devi during their journey in the forest. Atri Maharshi's wife, Anasuya Devi, had given Sita this blessing that anytime you stand in front of Rama, you will appear to be the most beautiful woman on earth. So Sita kept this as a secret. She thought, okay, like if I'm going to be the most beautiful woman in front of my husband's eyes any day, why should I tell him that it's a blessing that I have? She did not tell him that. Had she told the secret to Rama, this whole conflict in Rama's mind would not have happened. So it's a very important lesson for us to learn. In any intimate relationship, there is no role for secrecy, no matter how innocuous you think that is. So, that's a great, great lesson that we all need to know. Because quite often we tend to keep a few secrets from our husbands. Oh, he doesn't need to know that, it's no big deal. But in any intimate relationships, you never know how life is going to turn around, or what is going to happen in the days to come. It's better not to have secrets, at least in intimate relationships. I felt that is a very important thing about Siddha that I need to share with you. Also, there's one other thing, if I have 5 more minutes to say. When they were ready to go to the forest, Rama was about to leave, and everybody said, "Oh, Siddha is too young. You don't have to come. You're not used to the forest and the life there." But you know what Siddha said? If you are going to the forest, I'm going to walk ahead of you, because I need to make sure that you won't be there. A thorn won't prick you. So this is the leadership that a woman would take in any household. A woman's leadership. If a woman is walking ahead, she will make sure the people who walk behind her are not hurt. So as we celebrate International Women's Day tomorrow, on the 8th, with the slogan "Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal World in a Post-COVID World." So anytime the world is in trouble, women have risen to leadership. Think about it. Anytime there has been a problem in your family, your mother has been the leader. The mother has taken the role. You always found comfort in her arms and on her bosom. So that is what women's leadership is all about. Women's leadership has to be a gentle, transforming, soothing, healing leadership. And I hope the world will be a better place tomorrow for our children, because we have more women leaders like Siddha. Thank you all. All my words at the feet of Lord Rama. And once again, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Nisha Pillai, or my Nisha Chichi. So we have a couple of comments. Are you okay to extend a few minutes if required? Or are you
fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go with a couple of questions, and then maybe we'll talk about the comments. So we have one question from Indic Seminars. Even as a little girl, Sita was brilliant, brave, and trained in strategy. Was she part of a grand strategic plan along with Rama and others to bring down Ravana?
Well, when Lakshman took her to the forest after this whole thing to leave her in the forest, because Ram told Lakshman again. Lakshman actually took Sita to abandon her only because Sumitra told him Ramam Dashratham with him. No questions asked. If Ram tells you something, do it. So when as you all know, Lakshman was very angry that he had to go and abandon his sister-in-law. And very hesitantly, when he told Lakshman, I have to abandon you here because Ram told me to do that. Sita actually walks into the forest and smiles at him and says, "Do you think Rama abandoned me?" And she says, he cannot abandon me because Rama is God and I am goddess. He cannot survive without me. So we are never separated. And this has been the recurring theme in Ramayana. We say, what Ravana abducted was Maya. Sita, Rama had the Ekapatni Vrida. So that was not the culture of those days. Throughout Ramayana, Sita is part of Rama, and that's why we even call Ramayana Sita. And I did not go into the details of this, but if Ram is God who came to this world with a definite purpose, Sita herself, in her own words, it said, "We are never separated. If he is God, I am goddess." I guess I answered that.
Excellent. Beautifully said. Thank you for that. We have a lot of great comments that people, Grairapan temple devotees and others have been enjoying. So just to give you that feedback. There was one early comment on Facebook by Kumar Veera. I was under the impression that her husband cursed her to a stone until Rama arrives and turned her back.
Yeah. So, we should understand Ramayana is also a great poem. So in a poetic sense, it is, and actually in some other commentaries and other versions of Ramayana, it is said that she did become a stone. But for modern day perspective, if you tell your children, okay, this beautiful damsel became a stone and then the stone was turned into a woman when Rama touched with the feet, I think it makes more sense to tell your children, at least your grown up children, that if you are in isolation, your heart is a stone until it's touched by someone's compassion. And that's really what happened to Ahilya. That's the way I would like to take it. If you want to take it in a literal sense and think that it's a good thing if you're telling the story to a kid who is less than 10 years old, to tell her, okay, this was this beautiful lady who became a stone because her husband cursed, and then Bhagavan touched with the feet, and then she became this damsel again. But as you grow up, how do you want to take it? If you're left in the forest alone, isolated from the rest of the society, isolated from your family, and isolated from the caretaker you always had in life, then you are going social isolation. At some point, if anybody has felt social isolation, either alienated from your family, alienated from the rest of the society, or alienated from your friends or at work, all of us would have had that experience at work. Everyone else is one gang and you are alone there. That alienation is probably what hurts the most, and that would literally turn anyone into a stone. And if that happens to you, the only way to get out of that is to be in severe penance. And that is really what she did. In that isolation, she was in severe penance to the point that she achieved so much nobility within herself that the Lord herself had to touch her. The compassion, Sri Rama, you see, the important thing is nobody really felt Ahilya was a wrong character. And even Vishwamitra, when he tells Rama about her, says, this was a very unfortunate situation. She's an illustrious woman. She's goddess herself. And it happened. Whether she was right or wrong is a different story. But if that happens, then you are a stone. At that point, somebody's compassion has to touch you. So you can take it in the literal meaning, or you can take it the way I say.
Thank you. Beautiful symbolism and poetic, inspired thoughts there. Poetically inspired thoughts there. Dr. Pillai, there is another question. I always wonder, why did Rama ask Sita to jump into the fire for purification?
Okay, here, Sita herself says to Agni Deva, it's really not like Rama asked her to jump into the fire to purify herself. Sita says to Agni, you know my purity, let me prove it to the world. So it's not because Rama wanted it, but you have to think of those days when if your husband is the king and he has an obligation, the whole society is driven by what they if you're a worthy person, and the standards are set by the ways you live. So if Ram is answerable to his society, then Sita obviously, as his wife, had an obligation to prove her worth to the society. And she herself enters fire saying, let me prove my worth. And it's said at the end of it, Agni Deva actually carries her back to Ravana, to Ram, and says, take her back because I have proved her purity. So it's not like she had to jump in fire to prove herself. She chose to ask Agni Deva to vouch for her, because as you say, in the Hindu tradition, Agni has this very special role, or a very special position, where we say, once your 917 pure there, once in front of Agni, or if something is done verified by Agni, that is 100%. So she herself chose to do that. Agni gives her back to Rama, actually.
Beautiful. Another question is, what happens to Rama after Sita decided to go back to her mother Earth?
Uttara Ramayana is not a part that we usually want to discuss. But Rama has always lived the life of dharma. For him, and I guess every man should possibly live that life. Looking at it from a modern perspective, we might think like, okay, this he did was not right. He shouldn't have sent his wife there. He should not have allowed her to go back to her mother, whatever. But same happened to Krishna. why did Krishna at some point leave Vrindavan and go back and fight Kamsa? Because when a man lives his life, there are certain things that he should live for. And I would say this is actually my closing statement should have been this, so that this would have made more sense for you. What makes Western authors think that the women of India have not changed over the from 7,000 years up until now? They say what a woman of India lives for is the same then as it is now, because at the end of the day, what she needs to achieve with her life is just the same. What we all live for ultimately is the same. Our goals of life are the same. So it hasn't changed, and it hasn't changed because we are trained to think a certain way. So same thing with our men. We are trained to think a man is duty bound first, dharmic life. Your dharma comes first. So what did Rama look at as his dharma? To serve his country, to serve his people. Why do you think we are running to have this Rama Mandir in Ayodhya right now? Because if we want to have an iconic person to represent what dharma is or what that country stands for, there is none other than Rama to show that. So throughout, was his life an easy life after Sita went back to her mother? It was not. He did not have a good life. He did not live that luxurious life, comfortable life, the way you want to see it. But he still stood for dharma. And what, it's also important to understand dharma in a perspective that's different from the Western concept of right and wrong. There is no clear right and wrong there. Dharma, whatever holds you is dharma. Whatever upholds the social life, whatever upholds the social platform level, that is dharma. And Rama as a king, that is what he consistently did. There are several instances where if you look at it from your perspective today, you might want to say, oh, that was not the right thing to do, but that was dharma those days. And that is the way I would explain that. Rama's life was not easy, but till the last days of his life, when he chose to discard his body, he lived according to his dharma. And dharma is also a personal thing. That is also something we should say. To live dharmic is also like what you think is right, what you think is your part in holding this web in place.
Excellent, Dr. Pillai. Definitely beautiful in the way that you connected how Sanatana Dharma is truly transcendent, and the woman's role, especially when there's so much of conversation surrounding gender and how, whether there is place for Dharma in it. So thank you so much for reinforcing that point there. There was just one comment. Ravana could not molest Sita. The reason for that was because he was cursed by a woman earlier, that if in the future he tries to molest any woman, his head would explode. So just a comment there.
Yeah. Well, Ram, that is said again. These are all, there has been empty versions of Ramayana. We should understand that. So that is a version of Ramayana where it said that Ravana had a curse where if he touched a woman against her will, his head would explode. I don't think that's part of Valmiki Ramayana though. But what I was trying to say in this talk was the role of Mandodari in not allowing Sita to be raped. Okay, was that the only reason why Ravana did not touch Sita? Is something different, or there may be several explanations. We have even versions where they say Sita was Ravana's daughter, and he brought Sita to Lanka for a different reason. So Ramayana has 1,000 different versions and commentaries. But the point of today's talk was to tell you, like, as a wife of a man like Ravana, there is so much you can interfere in his life. And that interference from Mandodari's side was to make sure that that Sita was not raped by Ravana. At the same time, Sita was not killed by Ravana. So if your husband is flying every weekend, he has a private jet and he's flying every weekend to another country with a new girlfriend, how much can you interfere in his life? You can at least make sure that he doesn't kill anyone else. That is the only reason I spoke about that.
Very true. There's one question here. Titiksha is a good word for me to understand the relationship of the Adi Dampatis. I believe the word that has been used. How can we develop such qualities in current modern life where instant gratification is seeked? I hope I didn't say that incorrectly, the words there. Adi Dampati.
Adi Dampatis.
Yes.
Yeah, so the early husband and wife.
Yes.
See, what you live together for is very different from in the Indic thought from the Western thought. So in the Western thought, we always think we live together to have children together, to share our material wealth together, and to live within the frames of okay, I'm committed to you, you're committed to me, whatever. But within the Indic thought or in the Hindu tradition, a man and woman come together. Like I said, our aim of life at the end of the day is freedom from everything, is moksha. We don't live to achieve anything else. So, the life of a grahastha is, in the early days, we, after leaving the grahastha's life, we always went to vanaprastha either together or alone. And then we all, sannyasa was the way to go for everybody. So grahastha's life is only a preparation in your journey towards mukti. You have a social obligation. That social obligation you meet by having children. You raise them a certain way. You make them socially important, socially relevant individuals. And then what do you do with your life? You have to achieve mukti. So from an Indic thought, living together is to achieve mukti together, to live a dharmic life. And so it's beyond your life of the grahastha. You have to achieve spiritual maturation, and that is really your ultimate aim of life. So I think, and that's, I guess, most of us even today, after all your first 25 years of fighting, you will start loving your partner as you age. And I think that happens a lot in Indian households. We tend to understand each other better, and we mature together better. After the children are gone, emptiness syndrome makes you better partners. Emptiness syndrome makes you better lovers. And then at the end of the day, you grow up together, and you look at life differently together. And that I think from the Adi Dampatis to now, we are probably following in a different context.
Excellent. Beautifully said again, Dr. Pillai. There's just, I think, one last question. I know that we can go on and on. Your talks are just amazing. Anyone who is interested, she has done several talks, and they are on YouTube. And it's so inspiring. But I'll just end off, I just wanted to just say, Smita Tekepata, Dr. Lata Menon, and several other people have commented with such kind and beautiful words about your talk today. So just letting you know that. But one last question, and Amit Kaur, thank you again, Indic Seminars. But just wanted one last question, which is, Vidya had asked if you could provide an English version of Ramayana, perhaps close to the authentic, a book that you probably would have referred to, or which you consider is a good version of the Ramayana to read.
What would I consider as a good version of Ramayana to read?
English, in English. Any particular author or anything that you...
I will have to go back and think about this. It depends on, when I tell you what a good version of Ramayana to read is, it depends on who the reader is, because there are 1,000 commentaries on Ramayana. In a case, if the modern day people, a lot of people said, oh, Devadatta Patnaik's Sita was very nice, but Sita is not classic Ramayana, right? So if somebody is reading Sita, they have to read the original Ramayana first before you start you read Sita. So if for someone who it's very difficult to say, okay, this is a good book. So it depends on who the reader is. If it's a little kid reading Ramayana in English, that's going to be one book that I'm going to suggest. If it's for an older author, older reader, it would be a different book. But let me do a research and tell you what again, how big a book do you want to read, or how small a book do you want to read? There are empty commentaries on Ramayana. If you want something, gist, I'll give you that. One good book is very difficult to tell you to read. But I can definitely tell you in private if you want, depending on who the reader is.
I will pass that on to the person as well. The question was just, can you please suggest the authentic book in English for Ramayana? So I just, as a query. So I guess I will take your comments whenever you have, or rather a response, and I will bring it back to that. So I think that is everything for today. And sorry to have pronounced your name wrong, Amit Gore. So yeah, and if you would like to just wrap it up with a prayer, that would be great, Dr. Pillai.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. And thank you, Dr. Nisha Pillai, once again on behalf of Guruayappan Temple of Brampton. And as Canadians, to a person in the US as well.
It was a great experience for me too. Brilliant questions. I know this is a very elite August audience, and I thank all of you, especially Vijaya Dashakam, for this great opportunity. It's a learning experience for me as well. And Danu, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.